What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So we're coming to the end of Season of Discovery Phase 1, and there's one question that I want to ask the community. Was Season of Discovery Phase 1 a success or a failure? We're going to talk about a lot of the pros and cons of Phase 1 of Season of Discovery in this video. So if that's something you're interested in, grab your coffee, sit down, and let's dive in. So I want to start off this video with talking about the pros of Phase 1 Season of Discovery. Now, it's important to note here that we're talking about Phase 1, right? We're going to judge if Phase 1 was a success or a failure, and then we're going to move forward and talk about things that we would like to see changed in Phase 2. So we're going to start with the pros, and the first thing that I want to talk about is every class feels different than Vanilla WoW, right? Every class has received new runes that actually can change how the class plays on a fundamental level. This has made a lot of the meme specs viable, which feels really good. I mean, look at Ret Paladins, Boomkins can pump if you let them. The only one that still needs a lot of help is Shadow Priest currently, but I have a feeling that in the next phase, Shadow Priests are going to be really strong as well. So with the addition of adding these new runes, that added tons of exploration, tons of new things to figure out, tons of new metas being formed, and this also introduced 3 new tanks and a new healer, right? We have Warlock tanks, Shaman tanks, Rogue tanks, and the Mage healer. So one thing that this really did help with was the struggle of always having to find a tank and a healer for dungeons or for raids, and back in vanilla, tanking was not that fun, and healing wasn't that much fun either. So this has made it a lot easier to form groups. It's made it a little bit more accessible. People want to try out these new tanks, so there's an abundance of tanks, and people want to try out the mage healing, so there's more healers available for these groups. So overall, I think that's a very positive change. And a class that you may have played back in the day that was absolutely horrible, like Ret Paladin, and it was just a complete meme, is now extremely viable and does insane DPS. So overall, I think that's a pro, right? The new runes, the new exploration that came alongside of it, the new metas being formed, the new tanks, the new healers, that is a ton of content in itself, and I think that that is worth noting. Now, moving on from that, we've had some profession changes, right? We have new BIS items that are craftable at level 25, epics, right? We have the Void Touched gear, the Shifting Silver Breastplate for blacksmiths. We have a lot of cool things that have been added, right? And these pieces of gear are BIS for some classes, and they have also introduced new quest lines and things, right? So to unlock the ability to craft those new items, you have to go through a pretty lengthy quest line where you have to run the raid, you have to talk to the dead Tauren in Ashenvale, you have to head out to Hillsbrad, and it's pretty cool to see new quest lines added to vanilla like that. And if you think about it, even take a look at some of the rune quest lines, right? Like Metamorphosis or Divine Storm. These are pretty cool quests, and they feel pretty epic when you're doing them. So in my opinion, that deserves to be on the pro list as well. That's a lot of nice and new content. Then we've gotten some changes to PvP rewards, right? To incentivize you to do Warsong Gulch or to do the Battle for Ashenvale event. The new rewards are great. The new Sergeant's Cloak is 1,000 times better than the old one, so there's a reason to actually farm that now. We also have 10-man raiding in Phase 1, right? 10-man raiding, it's not my favorite thing. I like the large scale, like 25 or 40-man raiding. I know a lot of people are going to criticize me for that, but there's something super epic about like walking into Molten Core or Blackwing Lair with 39 of your guildmates, to get that many people together, to cooperate together. I know the content's not super hard, but it's about the camaraderie, right? And having all of these people come together to down these bosses and things that I love about like larger scale raiding, like 40-man. But 25 would be nice too, but 10-man raiding I would put on the pro list. For a lot of people, it has allowed them to jump into the raiding scene for the first time. It's more accessible, right? You can be a small guild or a small community, or even just a big group of friends. You know, maybe 7 or 8 of you, and you just pug 2 people, and now you have a raid group, and you can do it every 3 days. So it's made it a lot more accessible to people. It's gotten people into raiding who have never even raided before. So I think 10-man raiding deserves to be on the pro list as well. And then let's talk about the fact that these are level banded content phases, right? So phase 1 is 1 through 25. What this has done is it's allowed a lot of people who maybe don't have the time and always feel left behind to actually stay on par with everyone else. You don't need to play for 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, to stay on par with everyone, right? You can hit level 25 if you work a full-time job, if you're a father or a mother. It is possible. It's not that hard. And I think that that is a huge selling point for a lot of people. If this was a regular reset of vanilla where the level cap was 60, people would have been 60 and already clearing the content 3 or 4 days into the launch. And then those people that normally would be around level 15 by that time because they have other things to do, they would feel left out and most likely drop off and quit by level 25, 30 when it starts to slow down a little bit. So I think the level banded content phases are a huge pro for this season. And then the last pro that I want to talk about is I think that the Classic development team did a really good job at keeping this feeling like classic WoW. It still feels like vanilla WoW. It still feels very classic in terms of the exploration and the questing and the traveling, right? Traveling takes a long time. Yes, you can buy summons all over the world from warlocks if you have the money for that, but they kept it feeling like classic, which is super important because a lot of people were worried when we were first talking about this before it even launched, that with all these new abilities and all this stuff, people were like, oh, so we're basically playing Wrath of the Lich King just on, you know, in Azeroth, Kalimdor, and Eastern Kingdoms. It was just going to feel like Wrath of the Lich King. It doesn't. They did a really good job at keeping it feeling like classic. I think the tuning of the mobs out in the world was absolutely stellar as well. You cannot just blast through everything unless you're a hunter. You know, it still feels dangerous, right? You are more powerful, but the mobs are more powerful as well. So I think they did a really good job at balancing, adding all of this new content, changing all these classes, but still keeping it to feel true like vanilla World of Warcraft. So we've talked about some of the pros, and let's move on to some of the cons, because there are many cons as well. My first con that I want to talk about is there are some serious balancing issues with some of these classes, right? The thing is, I'm not sure if this deserves to be on the con list, simply because we are talking about classic vanilla style World of Warcraft, and let's just face it, the game isn't balanced, and it's not designed to be balanced. And I'd argue that that's part of the charm of the vanilla world. Now, some things are completely out of whack, right? Like we saw so many hunter nerfs and buffs and nerfs and buffs going off because hunters were just so far ahead of every other class at one point that it made it feel bad if you were playing anything else. And that is something that's not acceptable, and they did fix that. But I do think balancing is something that they're going to be working on throughout each and every phase. It's got to be extremely hard to balance all of these classes with all of these new abilities coming and stuff like that. It's going to be a hard job. And I don't think everything needs to be perfectly balanced, right? There is always going to be a few classes that are just miles ahead of everyone else, and that's okay. That is vanilla World of Warcraft. People still love it. People still played it back when the only thing you needed in your raids was Fury Warriors. So people will still play, people will still enjoy it, but I do think that some of the balancing, like back what I'm talking about when hunters were using the Scorpid pet, and it was just ridiculous, that wasn't intended, and stuff like that does need to be nerfed, and Blizzard did fix it. Another con I want to talk about is the Battle for Ashenvale, right? This was supposed to be a really cool, like, world PvP event, and it started out kind of like that, right? It did feel really cool, like Horde versus Alliance in Ashenvale, and you're, you know, fighting the leaders and gaining your reputation and getting honor and all that, but it very quickly turned into just an open world Alterac Valley where both sides just rushed as fast as they can to kill the leaders. Most people go out of their way to actually avoid PvP because they just want to win the event and get reputation as fast as possible. However, Blizzard has spoke about this in multiple posts, and they're talking about the next PvP event. It's going to be nothing like the Battle for Ashenvale, and they're taking what they've learned from this and using that going forward. So that is a con right now, but a pro for the next phase. Another con that I think we need to talk about is some of the runes like Metamorphosis or Divine Storm require groups of other players to help you in acquiring these runes. And this was great back when everyone was acquiring these runes, but now that everyone has them and most likely is just raid logging, it could be kind of hard if you're a warlock right now trying to get Metamorphosis if you're not in a guild with people who are going to help you get it. There's not many people going out of their way to do those things currently at this time because most of the players who wanted those runes already have acquired them. So I could see this being a con going forward as we move through phases, right? They need to figure out a way to kind of make these runes soloable in past phases and things like that, just because, you know, let's say someone wants to try Warlock next phase and levels 1 through 25 are pretty bare and there's not many people doing it. It's going to be kind of annoying for them to go back and do it. I mean, I guess you can go back and do it at level 40, right, and just solo the whole thing, which you definitely will be able to do. But that kind of makes it feel a little weird. So I think they need to figure out a way to implement these runes a little bit better in coming phases so that it doesn't feel like you're kind of like exploiting and just going back and one-shotting everything to get the runes, because it doesn't really make sense like that. If that's the case, then just put it on the trainer for 1 gold and just be able to buy Metamorphosis. But I think there's a better way to design it going forward so that it will stay relevant and you'll still have to actually do that content going forward. The next one, this is a big one, and a lot of you probably already know this and are watching videos about it currently, and that is going to be botters, GDKPs, and gold buying. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy GDKPs a lot. I think they're a lot of fun, and when you have a ton of alts, it's a fun way to make gold and add some camaraderie, and it's enjoyable for some people. Some people don't like it at all, and I completely understand that as well. The problem with it is that it does encourage RMT, right? It encourages people to buy gold. It encourages bots to be relevant because people are buying a ton of gold. Now, GDKPs aren't the only reason people are buying gold. This is classic vanilla World of Warcraft, and gold is extremely valuable. So, naturally, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of botters. And what happens with this is that these botters inflate everything. You can't make any money. If you're someone who plays 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week after you get home from work, it is really hard to farm gold in that amount of time, simply because a lot of things are either ridiculously expensive and through the roof, or what you can normally farm and make gold on isn't worth any money. So that is something that I think needs to really change. I think it really does hurt the overall health of the game and the economy within the game. I know Blizzard is banning bots currently, but I feel like it's not as effective as it should be, because what happens is, let's say a botter gets to level 25, right? They bot for 7 days, they get reported 100,000 times, and they get banned on day number 10, right? The days leading up to their ban, they already botted, sold all these items, sold gold, did all this stuff, so it already affected the economy. Now they get banned, and they just have another account ready to go anyway. That, you know, these botters have hundreds of World of Warcraft accounts going at one time, hundreds of bots farming at the same time. So, okay, these 10 got banned, but I have another 10 on the way. It doesn't really work. And I think the underlying issue with it is that these bots need to be banned faster, right? Because if a bot has a 10-day lifespan from the time that it starts, it hits cap level, it farms for 6 or 7 days, sells all those items, acquires that gold, sells that gold, and then gets banned, it's still extremely lucrative for the botter, right? Because now they have another bot and they go again. If the botters got banned on day 1 or day 2, it wouldn't be as lucrative, it wouldn't be as profitable, and they probably wouldn't be as relevant. So I think that's one way to fix it. I'm not a game developer, I'm not sure, and I'm sure Blizzard is actively trying to figure out ways around this because it is really hard. But that's something I do think needs to be fixed and really does hurt the overall health of the game moving forward. Now, the last con that I want to talk about is the time frame for Phase 1, right? A lot of people are already done with Phase 1 and raid logging. There's people quitting, there's people not playing anymore, there's people complaining. If you go on the forums, there's just a ton of posts of people complaining, you know, about that Phase 1 is lasting too long. And to an extent, I do agree, right? I have 2 level 25s, I have 2 or 3 alts that are around like 15, 20, 22, just to test out other runes and things like that. I've pretty much done everything there is to experience in the game. I've leveled fishing, I've leveled cooking, I've leveled blacksmithing, leatherworking, mining, skinning. I've done everything that there is to offer at this point in time, and I myself am definitely getting a little bored and waiting for Phase 2. Now, I think going forward, these phases should be on more of a time frame that's determined by the player base, right? So I think that for Phase 1, in my opinion, a solid amount of time for Phase 1 would be 5 to 6 weeks, right? It's only level 25. Most people are going to be 25 week 1. And then you have 4 or 5 weeks farming the same raid and doing the battle for Ashenvale, and then your professions, and you level alts and things like that, or farm some gold. But Phase 2, you know, we're going 25 to 40. That's going to take a little bit longer. The people who do work full-time jobs and only have a couple of hours a day to play, it's going to take them a lot longer to hit cap level, which is understandable. I think for Phase 2, in my opinion, the sweet spot would be anywhere from 6 to 9 weeks. at level 40. I think that that would be good, but I do really feel like the best way Blizzard can go about these level banded content phases going forward is to poll the community via like an in-game mail, right? You open up your mailbox and you got a poll in there and you have to answer it and hit reply, and it sends it off to Blizzard. And I think around the 4 or 5 week mark for each phase, they should poll the community and say, hey, would you guys want the next phase to be coming sooner rather than later? Maybe give 2 estimated, dates. They don't have to be solid dates that are set in stone, but 2 estimated dates of like, would you rather it come here or would you rather it come here? And poll the community. And then if the community is like, hey, we want like at least another month, that's fine. So then they can maybe send out another poll 2 weeks later and say, hey, how is everyone feeling? Is everyone enjoying this? Is everyone done? And then just go with the majority, right? If 70% of people are done with the phase and 30% are like, no, I'm still having fun, I'm leveling 10 or 11 alts, then yeah, pump out the new phase earlier. And I think that's probably the best way that they can go about doing it. It's polling the community, right? Then everyone's happy, at least the majority will be happy. And that's a good way to go forward. But yeah, so those are my pros and cons. And personally, I would say that phase 1 for Season of Discovery was a success overall. There are some cons, but there's always going to be some cons. And a lot of these cons are just learning experiences for Blizzard to use and adapt to in these next coming phases. And they already are pretty active on fixing broken things and stuff like that. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I would say overall that it was a success. I've been enjoying it, and I am really looking forward to phase 2. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you enjoying it still? Are you done with it? Are you bored? Do you think it was a success, or do you think it was a complete failure? Let me know down in the comments below. But if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. It really does help me out a lot. And subscribe to the channel. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next time I post a video. And if you want to hang out with me live, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/hammerdance. I'll drop a link to that in the description below this video. And if you want to join an awesome Discord community full of like-minded people who all enjoy geeking out over classic WoW and Season of Discovery, we will welcome you with open arms. Link in the description as well. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one.